Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Podcast Accelerator, the thrice-weekly show that brings you podcast education, industry insights, and straight-talking reactions to podcasting news. I am your host, Mark Asquith, that British podcast guy, and CEO and co-founder here at Rebel Base Media, the podcast tech company that brings you the Podcast Success Academy, podcast websites, Productivity, Rebel Base Studios, and Captivate.fm, the world's only growth-oriented podcast host, where you can get your first month of podcast hosting for just $1. And you can also transfer in an existing podcast completely for free. So if you're looking for a host that serves you like a human, if you're looking for a host that is there to help you grow, not just serve your files and your download numbers, if you're looking for someone that is proactive to help you, please go and check out Captivate.fm. Now, today on the show, I'm going to talk about how to create, very simply, your first podcast network. But before I do that, just a quick little reminder that the team at AWeber are still giving you a chance to try their amazing platform for just 90 days completely free, all right? It's rare that you get a 90-day trial because most people will, they'll give you a week, they'll give you a couple of weeks. AWeber are that confident that they can help you to build engagement and relationships with your audience that they're going to give you 90 days for free. So please go and check out AWeber. I use their email marketing platform for everything that I do. So please go and check it out at markasquith.com/AWeber. Now, we've talked about DIY networks in the past before in my previous show, The 7-Minute Mentor. We've talked about them over on the Podcast Success Academy and so on and so forth. And I know a number of friends of mine as well, Steve and Dan at Pacific Content, they talk about DIY podcast networks. It's a thing, all right? I've actually been doing this for a while, okay? And when it comes to a podcast rebrand or a podcast brand, there's a decision that you've got to make when you actually put this thing together, which is this the right time to start that first network? Now, let's just be really clear on what a podcast network is. Generally speaking, you think of the bigger network. So you'll think of Wondery, you'll think of Panoply, you'll think of Midroll, you'll think of Podcast One. They're podcast production companies that will essentially co-brand their podcast. So it'll be by Podcast One, it will be by Midroll, it will be by Wondery. And then they'll cross-promote their shows. So you might be listening to Business Wars and they'll say, go and listen to another show on the network. Well, that's all a network is, okay? And theoretically, now I know sponsors don't like to do this right now, but theoretically, you can make it so that brands and sponsors can sponsor your full network. So they can buy a network sponsorship package. I know sponsors aren't really that open to that right now, but maybe that'll change in the future. A lot of people in the brand game want to just sponsor one particular show for its own niche audience. However, when you look at the benefits of this, when you look at actually what does it take to set this up, it's almost crazy not to set your own network up if you have more than one show. So, for example, with me, I've got the Straight Talking Guide to Launching Your First Product. It's a seasonal thing. There's one season of it. It's boxed off. It is what it is. There's 150 interviews, the Mark Asquith interview series, personal development, startup marketing, and leadership. They're all boxed off, okay? 4 different shows, all me interviewing different people. There's a 7-Minute Mentor. There's the archives of the 7-Minute Mentor. There's this show, the Podcast Accelerator. There's Captivate, my show with Jess, which is kind of a deeper dive into the podcasting world. And there's the new show, Founders Fireside, that we're launching with Kieran, which is behind the scenes of running Rebel Base Media. And of course, there's Spark of Rebellion, my Star Wars show. Now, they are all on the Rebel Base Media podcast network. We have our own network. If you search for Rebel Base Media, you'll see that the author is Mark Asquith, Rebel Base Media, Kieran McKeefrey, Rebel Base Media. On the cover art, Rebel Base Media. I can promo these shows across the board. So I can say, well, look, hey guys, if you like the Podcast Accelerator, go and check out Captivate, the show from me and Jess, where we deeper dive into the issues at hand in podcasting today. What I can also do is I can tell Apple, Spotify, and the rest of the people that I am a network publisher. So when you see on Apple Podcasts, more from this publisher, you click that link. So if you're listening to the Podcast Accelerator, you click that link, more from this publisher, you'll get all of my shows, okay? It's really, really interesting. And in Captivate.fm, the podcast host that I own with Kieran, we've built that to be network specific from the ground up. So you can build your own network very, very easily, very, very simply in Captivate, and you can look at network level download stats as opposed to just show level download stats. You can drag and drop shows to create new networks. It's a really good bit of kit, all right? So this creating your own network is pretty easy, and then it just becomes a case of cross-promoting, cross-marketing, all right? Now you might think, well, Mark, that sounds really easy. What's the point in doing it? Surely it's more complex than that. Well, look, if you are Wondery, if you are one of the big networks out there, yes, of course it's more complicated than that. You need to set up different websites, which again, you can do with us on Captivate. You can do it with our higher tier podcast websites platform as well. But ultimately, to get started with this, most people, when they rebrand a show, they'll think to themselves, well, I'll just rebrand. But instead, what a lot of people could do is actually set up a different show and start to build out this kind of low-level, early-stage network. Go and have a look at what we've done with that. So search for Rebel Base Media or my name, Mark Asquith, on any podcast app of your choice. You'll see all of my shows. They've all got the same style branding. Even Spark of Rebellion, which is a very different look and feel, has got the Rebel Base Media brand identity on it. And it's by the Rebel Base Media Network. Okay? Now, for us, it's no more difficult than just simply popping in the data, the name, sticking some logos on some cover art, dragging and dropping and creating a network inside Captivate.fm, our podcast hosting, analytics and distribution platform. But as you get bigger and bigger, you're not going to find yourself thinking to yourself, I wish I'd done this years ago if you do it now. You give yourself a better piece of brand perception by saying, do you know what? This is one show in my network. I'm really into podcasting. This is my jam. It's what I do. I love it. I'm dedicated to it. And as such, I've understood that setting up a network is important. And like I said, because it's such a low level of work, it's almost worth even doing it when you set your first show up and saying this is the first of a network. You might never add any more shows to it, but at least you can start to plan ahead. You can think bigger picture when you start to get ideas for different shows. I've always got ideas for podcasts. You know what it's like. I don't think anyone that does a podcast just ends up doing one podcast. I think we end up doing more than one podcast. So, to be really clear, how to set your network up. You need to be on a hosting company, a hosting platform that supports networks. So Captivate.fm does support networks. You need to be thinking, how does this work with my brand? So Rebel Base Media has a nice brand identity that can be put in the background of all podcast cover art on all websites and so on and so forth. You need to think about cross-promotion. How are you going to say to people that listen to Spark of Rebellion to go and listen to Kieran's golf show, Clubhouse Blues? You've got to think, how are you going to promote it? But other than that, it just becomes a brand piece. It's popping in the data in your author, Mark Asquith, Rebel Base Media. It's putting in the show notes, well, look, this is part of the Rebel Base Media Network. That's what it's about, okay? You can set that up early, and as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, you can do more with it. But to set it up, to give perception, because remember, the industry is growing. People and brands and sponsors want to work with other brands, i.e. you are a podcasting brand. So if you are competing with a podcast that isn't set up to look as if it's got a network being built, all else is equal, and you can say, well, actually, do you know what? There's opportunity here to get involved with the wider network as well down the line. You stand a better chance of getting that sponsorship because it looks like you've thought it through a lot more, all right? So please, have a think about that. It's not a huge piece of work. If you need a hand with it, check out podcastsuccessacademy.com. We've got some data and some courses in there on how to do that. So, thank you so very much for joining me here on the Podcast Accelerator. Please remember to tell all of your podcasting friends that the show is available to listen to for free in any app that supports podcasts. And if you're wondering what the best next step to take for your own podcast is, whether you're a veteran podcaster or brand new to the space, go ahead and take our short 5-minute survey, which is going to help you to diagnose and overcome the main issue holding back your podcast. Okay? What I'm going to do with that is, not only am I going to give you the solution to that one big issue holding you back, there are only a few big issues that podcasters struggle with, all right? We've gone through them, we've diagnosed them, we've created solutions. So I'll help you to diagnose that. I'm going to give you access to the solution to that. I'm going to give you access to our free and very, very vibrant Podcast Rebellion community on Facebook. It's a private group. You can only get that by actually being a part of this Rebellion community and using that survey to overcome the problem. I'm going to give you access to our free group coaching. I'm going to give you actionable and insider-only emails and even a free invitation to the Podcast Success Academy. All in return for going and finding out what the biggest problem is with your podcast and actually getting the solution there and then for it. So please go and check it out. Invest 5 minutes to grow your show at rebelbasemedia.io/grow. And until the next episode, thank you so very much. And never forget, the more you expect from yourself, the more you will excel.